Imagine inventing something that changes the lives of 30 million people. A single idea, a spark, one that earns a company billions of dollars. But for you, not a thank you, not a bonus, just silence, or worse, legal war. This is the story of Kenneth Nkosana Makate, a man who fought one of the most powerful companies in Africa. A man who won, but may never enjoy the billions he rightfully earned. Early life, the seed of innovation. Born in 1977 in the townships of Katlehong, just outside Johannesburg, Kenneth was not born into wealth. In fact, life was anything but easy. The apartheid system had left his community broken, underfunded, and forgotten. But Kenneth was different. He had questions. He had curiosity. While other children were playing in the dust, he was taking apart old radios and watching the magic of wires and signals. Even as a boy, he was fascinated by communication. I always believed that one day, technology would be the great equalizer, Kenneth once said in a rare interview. But I never imagined I'd create something that powerful. In school, he was quiet, thoughtful, brilliant. He wasn't the loudest in the room, but his mind worked like a machine, always solving, always dreaming. By the time he was in university studying accounting and finance, Kenneth already had the traits of a world-class problem solver. But he didn't know that one small idea, born out of necessity, would become the foundation of a billion-rand empire. The birth of the "please call me" idea. It was the early 2000s. Mobile phones were exploding across Africa, but airtime was expensive. People would often run out of credit, unable to make even the simplest call. Kenneth, working as a junior finance specialist at Vodacom, noticed this problem everywhere, from his colleagues to his family. And then, like lightning, the idea came. What if someone could send a free message, a sort of digital cry for help, to let others know to call them back? It was simple, elegant, and utterly genius. He proposed the idea to his manager and was told to present it to the board. No fancy pitch deck, no patent lawyers, just a passionate young man and his revolutionary idea. Vodacom executives loved it. They said they'd look into it, Kenneth later recalled. And then they went silent. A few months later, Please Call Me was launched, without my name. The launch that shocked Africa. In 2001, Vodacom launched Please Call Me, a free message service that allowed users without airtime to send a request to be called back. The impact, immediate and explosive. Over 30 million users began using the service. It became a cultural staple across South Africa and beyond. The feature literally kept families connected, allowed businesses to run, and helped people survive in times of crisis. Please Call Me wasn't just a tool, says tech historian Palisa Mikaze. It was a lifeline. But while Vodacom profited, raking in billions of rands from increased traffic, loyalty, and data usage, Kenneth was pushed into the shadows. No bonus, no royalties, not even a thank you letter. He had become invisible. If you believe creators deserve their credit, smash that like button right now. This is just the beginning of Kenneth Makate's incredible fight. Subscribe so you don't miss what happened next, because it gets heartbreaking. Let's continue. Conflict brews, the betrayal begins. Kenneth waited, quietly, politely, hoping Vodacom would do the right thing, hoping the leaders he once respected would acknowledge his contribution. But instead, silence, and then gaslighting. He was told the idea was never his, that he had no proof, that it was a corporate strategy, not a personal invention. But Kenneth knew the truth. He began to document everything he remembered. Every meeting, every email, every conversation. He reached out to lawyers. Most of them laughed. You're going against Vodacom, they said. Impossible, they'll crush you. But Kenneth didn't care. He wasn't just fighting for money. He was fighting for recognition, for his dignity, for every underdog in Africa who had ever been robbed of their brilliance. The legal war that shook South Africa. It takes a certain kind of bravery to stand alone before giants. Kenneth Nkosana Makate was not a lawyer, not a millionaire, not a CEO. He was just a man with a memory and the truth. But the truth doesn't always win. Not in a world ruled by corporate titans. In 2007, after years of silence, false promises, and disrespect, Kenneth made a decision that would define his life. He filed a lawsuit against Vodacom, his former employer. The claim: he was the original inventor of the "please call me" idea. And Vodacom had built an empire on his genius. The corporate denial. Vodacom's response was swift and brutal. Their legal team, backed by millions in corporate resources, denied everything. They claimed Kenneth's idea was never formally recorded. There was no written agreement of compensation. The idea was developed internally, not by him. It was the classic David versus Goliath story, only this time, Goliath had the money, the media, and the political ties. They tried to erase me, Kenneth later said. Not just from the boardroom, but from history. The key evidence: memory versus machinery. Kenneth didn't have millions to hire elite lawyers. But he had something else: testimonies from former Vodacom staff, internal memos, emails, and most importantly, his word. In one dramatic moment in court, Kenneth stood before the judge and said, "This is not about airtime. This is about recognition, dignity, and the value of an African mind." For years, the case dragged through the South African courts. The system was slow, and the law, complex. Vodacom appealed every motion, stretched every legal technicality, and used every delay tactic. They wanted him to give up. They wanted the world to forget. But Kenneth didn't flinch. If you've ever felt underestimated or ignored, drop a fire in the comments. Because what Kenneth did next shocked the entire country. Subscribe, because this is the part they never wanted you to hear. The Supreme Court shocker. In 2016, after nearly a decade of legal fighting, the South African Constitutional Court, the highest court in the land, delivered a stunning judgment. Kenneth Nkosana Makate was the rightful inventor of "Please Call Me." Vodacom was legally obligated to enter into compensation negotiations. The ruling was unprecedented. It was a massive victory for Kenneth, and a powerful message to corporations: you cannot steal from your employees and expect silence. The court declared that Vodacom must determine a reasonable compensation amount, considering the massive financial gain the company had made over the years. The billion-rand question. After the ruling, Kenneth could have celebrated. But the nightmare wasn't over. Vodacom dragged its feet again, this time under the guise of negotiation. Kenneth's team estimated that "Please Call Me" had contributed tens of billions of rand in revenue. Based on international IP compensation standards, his fair share could range from R10 billion to R20 billion, roughly $500 million to $1 billion. But Vodacom lowballed him with an offer of R47 million, just over $2.5 million United States dollars. And not even as a full settlement, but as their final word. Outrage erupts nationwide. South Africans across the country were furious. Social media lit up with hashtags, #PayMakate, #Justice for Kenneth, #Please Call Me. Protesters gathered outside Vodacom stores. Activists called for boycotts. The public saw this for what it was: corporate exploitation of black African talent. If this was an American tech inventor, said one journalist, he'd be on the cover of Forbes. But Kenneth, he's still fighting just to be paid. Why Kenneth may never see his billions. Here's the tragic truth. Despite winning the case, despite the court ruling, despite public support, Vodacom continues to appeal. They continue to stall. And Kenneth, he continues to wait. Now in his 40s, Kenneth has spent over 17 years in this battle. He has lost time. He has lost energy. He has lost years with his family, all to claim what is rightfully his. They think I'll get tired, Kenneth said in 2023. But this is my life. I can't walk away from it. If you believe in justice, if you believe that African inventors deserve more than scraps, then like this video, share it, tell someone, because Kenneth's story is our story of every genius who got overlooked and refused to disappear. Money has no memory, but the world does. While Vodacom's profits soared into the billions, one man waited, watching the fruit of his mind nourish a giant. Let's now follow the money and the silence that protects it. Vodacom's "Please Call Me," the gold mine. After the 2001 launch of "Please Call Me," Vodacom's user base skyrocketed. The feature became a key loyalty driver, a revenue multiplier, a brand differentiator in a crowded telecom market. Even though the service was free to users, the ripple effects were enormous. Here's how. 1. Increased user retention. People who relied on "Please Call Me" were more likely to stay with Vodacom. That alone is worth billions in long-term customer value. 2. Higher airtime purchases. Recipients of the message would often call back, spending airtime, which made Vodacom money. 3. Advertising and data. Eventually, Vodacom started monetizing the service by embedding ads in the messages, promoting Vodacom offers via "Please Call Me" texts. The numbers, realistic estimates. According to public telecom reports and expert testimony, "Please Call Me" helped generate over $70 billion, $3.7 billion United States dollars in indirect and direct revenue over 15 plus years. Daily usage of 50 to 100 million messages. Unmatched brand loyalty across low-income markets. Even conservative legal estimations argue that Kenneth should receive between 5% and 15% of revenue attributed to "Please Call Me." That equals between R3.5 billion and R10.5 billion, $200 minus 550 million United States dollars, but Vodacom's final offer? A mere R47 million. That's less than 0.1% of what the invention generated. Corporate silence, the modern cage. Vodacom's strategy is clear. They've adopted the oldest trick in the corporate playbook: delay, appeal, silence, repeat. Because here's the reality of massive companies: they can afford to drag a case for 20 years. They can bury inventors in legal fees. They can wait until their opponent loses hope. And meanwhile, the world forgets. They don't need to defeat you, says legal analyst Zanele Kamalo. They just need to outlast you. The emotional toll on Kenneth. Kenneth doesn't live in a mansion. He's not on magazine covers. He doesn't fly private jets. He still lives a modest life, as a father, a husband, a man clinging to a dream of justice. But the toll has been immense. This case has cost me more than money, Kenneth once said. It's cost me time with my children, my health, my peace. He has faced years of emotional exhaustion, public backlash from corporate loyalists, legal harassment, and worst of all, the fear that his fight might be in vain. Sometimes, I wonder if it was worth it. But then I think of the millions of people who now know the truth. And I keep going. The people speak. What's extraordinary is not just Kenneth's bravery, but the way South Africans have rallied behind him. Civil rights organizations, grassroots protests, TikTok creators, radio hosts, young entrepreneurs, they all say the same thing: Makate represents all of us. The overlooked, the silenced, the stolen from. In a country still battling post-apartheid inequality, Kenneth's story isn't just a legal case. It's a symbol. If you've ever had an idea that someone else profited from, share this video. If you believe African creators deserve respect, leave a comment. If you believe justice delayed is justice denied, hit the subscribe button. Because this isn't just Kenneth's story, it's every dreamer's story, and it's far from over. Today, Kenneth Makate is a billionaire on paper, but still a prisoner of legal warfare. He may never enjoy the billions his invention created, but his legacy, it's untouchable. They can delay the payment, he says, but they can't delete the truth. Kenneth taught us that innovation doesn't always come from Silicon Valley. Power doesn't always win, and courage has no price tag. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.